Alright, welcome to your major project. Over these next 2 weeks, we're going to be putting what we've learned into practice. We're going to be creating an explainer animation from scratch. You've already had a deep dive into the brief in lesson 5, that is lesson 5.2. In case you've skipped that one, best to go back and look at it now. So in this week, I'm going to cover the script, storyboards, style frames, voiceover, choosing music, and then creating an animatic. Then in the final week, we will be animating it, which after all of this pre-production and design work will be the easy part. Now, we've already had a workflow lesson, and that was more focused on workflow, bringing files from Illustrator into After Effects, and the animation part, and workflow during the animation. This lesson is going to be all the workflow before that, and I won't be going into minute detail of how to create each keyframe, every adjustment in the graph editor, because I won't really be doing anything technically challenging that we haven't already covered before, certainly in the animation phase. So this will be less of a one-to-one tutorial and me demonstrating how I made these. I'll be spending more time out of After Effects covering the bigger picture. And in this section, we have a lot of different kind of tasks. Writing, storyboarding, designing, recording, choosing music. To many of you, not all of these will be super exciting. I know that I personally prefer the animation process to the design process, but learning these tasks and getting good at them, and by getting good I mean learning to find joy in each of them, it will give you a more holistic skill set, and even if you're lucky enough to find yourself in a position where you only need to focus on one aspect that you really enjoy the most, you'll have an understanding of the other parts of the process and be better able to work with those who take on those roles. So I hope these sections cover a bit more of the sort of practical workflow in a pipeline, working on projects in the industry that will make things smoother for everyone involved. And I will tell you from experience, the best thing you can offer in an environment like that is a seamless experience. If you can help a project along by being prepared and offering solutions to the inevitable problems that you will encounter, you will be invaluable. So I'm not going to be showing off the flashiest new animation techniques, but more practical tips for not just the motion design industry, but commercial arts in general. So you can communicate your ideas and make creating what you want easier. And we'll cover that all through this journey of making this explainer animation. Now, one thing I want to introduce you to is a software you might not have assumed that is a pivotal part in the motion design industry, and that is Google Sheets. A lot of what we do in this lesson is going to be placed into this document. Now, Google Sheets is essentially the Google Docs slideshow program, the equivalent of PowerPoint, and this document I've taken from my time working at Broken Yellow and Buck as well. I believe this one was actually made out of a copy that we used at Broken Yellow, which was one of the production companies I first worked in. And of course, I've made lots of adjustments and changes since then. That was over, I think, 8 years ago now. And lots of studios use Google Sheets or some other similar program out there because mainly they are very easy to update and swap out images. And multiple people can be working on it at one time. It's very easy to save to a PDF that you can then send to a client. It doesn't have the most customizable features design-wise. You could probably create a nicer designed, prettier PDF in Illustrator or InDesign, but this offers more than enough, certainly to communicate the basics with the client. So this is what I found to offer the most success in that front in the past. Okay, so we start off with the title, then we have a little title screen for the script, and I've put in brackets approved. Always good to remind the client when they have approved something, and the more times they see it, the more times they will, I suppose, be less encouraged to suggest changes. And here's the script that is approved. The moon was first theorized to be made of cheese as far back as 1000 BC. And as whole cheese variations became more popular, the cratered surface of the moon looked increasingly suspicious. However, after a small expedition to the surface, returning samples disappointingly showed the total cheese content to be low as 7%. A sad day for mankind. Now, this is the short script that I came up with. I believe it reads at about 20 to 25 seconds. And it's important whenever you're writing a script or whenever you're reviewing a script from a client that you do read it out loud, because it can look good on paper, but when you say it, it might be very different. Already reading this, I'm like, this is a pretty long sentence. Maybe this could be split up into 2. Or I or the voice actor would need to read it with a very big breath beforehand. And famously, Harrison Ford used to say this a lot to George Lucas on the sets of Star Wars. He says, you can type this shit, but you can't say it. Move your mouth when you're typing, George. I believe in good humor. Something will sound strange and unnatural, but look fine on paper. And make sure when you are timing your script, include pauses for impact as well. Even though you might be able to include more information, speaking really rapidly just to get more words into a 1-minute timeline or down to 30 seconds won't be as effective as saying less and then allowing natural pauses. And if you do get a script from the client and you think it could be made better, it is fine to request them. But I would say certainly offer alternatives. If you're offering solutions and saying, well, this sentence here is a bit too long, can we split it into 2 sentences? Here's what that would look like. That is going to be much more likely to be accepted by the client, and that gives you a little bit more influence on how the project turns out too. So I'd highly recommend that. After the script, we have a mood board. Now, I didn't put the mood board as a requirement on the brief because it's not always necessary. Here's the mood board I made for this project. And if you're not familiar with a mood board, it is a collection of images like this that represents how the design will look or feel. Now, you can use lots of software to create these. You can use Pinterest, Millernote, or just place images together in Illustrator. They are great ways to communicate to your client, to your team, or just to yourself what you are aiming for. And it gets everyone on the same page without spending a lot of time on design. Because you might spend a lot of time designing something, and it is not what the client wants or sees for the project at all. Then you have to start again. Making a mood board takes a fraction of the time. If I'd shown this to a client, and the client might think, oh, we don't like these kind of retro images here, maybe we're thinking it more had a futuristic sci-fi vibe, then I could go collect new images, create a new mood board, and have something in front of them again in a much smaller time frame. So this is the one I created for this project, and this was put together in Illustrator with these collection of images, and I really like collecting images in Pinterest. So here is my Pinterest board. I have 71 pins for this project. Obviously, I only used about 8 in that mood board, but I really like collecting a lot of images. So I'll scroll down to the bottom so you can see where I started adding images, because my favorite feature of Pinterest is that it suggests ideas and other similar pins for images that you've already collected. So I started off by adding just some images from the Apollo missions, and I knew I wanted to use photography elements in here, so I found some designs that feature a collage of black and white images and some text as well, particularly looking out for ones that were space themed. So I added a bunch of those, trying to look for ones that had graphs or some other bits of data and information as well that I knew I wanted to feature in the project, and then searched for some more images, which were pretty much all from NASA and the Hubble telescope of space itself. Then that led me to some more retro space imagery, some more traditional illustrations from the 20th century. And I knew I didn't want mine to be so I tried to focus on selecting images that had a lot of white space or black space in many of these, where there are more quiet areas in the design, where they're not just packed full of elements like some of these. And then I realized I needed to include some cheese imagery as well, and I thought some kind of retro posters of cheese, some old advertisements, would suit the theme really well of doing a kind of parody explainer set during the space race in the 50s and 60s. So I had a lot of images here, and then the feature that I liked so much about Pinterest is down here. Find some more ideas for this board. If we click on that, Pinterest is going to suggest a lot of images as well, and I think these could work really well too. These suit the vibe as well. Pinterest is really good at finding things that you might not be able to search for yourself. Just because I added a bunch of space images, a bunch of retro vintage illustration images, and some cheese images, it's probably going to suggest a combination of all of those. So that's how I like to collect images on Pinterest, and then I will pick my favorite ones that I think represent the style the best and compile them in Illustrator and just save this image out to share with the client. Now, my idea for this project was to create a kind of Vox style explainer. Vox, I guess, are a YouTube news channel. They have lots of videos. I can see 1.6 thousand here. So they have lots of videos, but they do explainer animations really, really well. Their Earworm series is particularly fantastic. There's just great motion design throughout all of these. So if you're looking for inspiration, I would suggest checking those out. They're where I got a lot of my inspiration from. They really communicate ideas really well with archived imagery, designed elements, and really they come together to create the best combination of educational and entertaining as well. Now, not all Vox videos have this level of motion graphic production, but Earworm is a great series to start on. And I'm really taking influence from how they use archival footage. Well, I'll be using archival photography for this one, and I think that will help sell the idea that my explainer is more of an authentic kind of parody, and will allow us to spend more time communicating ideas through the design and the animation, rather than just moving shapes around in After Effects and the technical side, which we've already spent so long on in this course. So this is the inspiration that I've collected from that. This is the final mood board. The final animation won't look exactly like this, but it should evoke the same mood.